Thank you for joining us today in this side event at the 2023 ECOSOC Youth Forum South-South Intergenerational Dialogue Partnership to Promote Innovative Education, Connecting SDG 4 and SDG 17. We have our director who will give you the preliminary, the welcoming word. So over to you, Francesc Pedró.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It is really a pleasure welcoming you all to this South-South dialogue among young people. I wanted simply to say a few things about why UNESCO is so much committed to this kind of dialogues. First of all, as you may already know, the UNESCO International Institute for Higher Education cares about the quality of higher education policies in view, in particular, of the SDG 4. Now, sometimes we feel that the policy discussions about higher education, and particularly about what innovation is when it comes to teaching and learning, are everything for young people, but without taking them into account. It's a kind of a rare type of absolutism. You know, you rule for the world without asking your most important stakeholders how they feel about the directions that innovations should take from now on. Now, this is a very good example precisely of the engagement that UNESCO would like to have, not only with youth. And may I tell you that in December, UNESCO is going to organize a youth forum, by the way, to which all of you are invited. But it is also the UNESCO legacy to aspire the work about multilateralism. We think that for many of our generations, the most important heritage that we can pass on the youth is precisely our commitment to multilateralism. And I think that certainly it is the only way forward to cope with global issues like the ones the SDGs are trying to address. And it is important to realize that the UN system, and particularly UNESCO, has a role to play because in many instances, particularly in the global south, youth are disconnected. I mean, it's not that you cannot find youth representatives here and there. It's simply that this connection south-south is missing. And precisely the opportunity that the Youth ECOSOC provides to us of gathering, you know, important, relevant, I would say innovators, youth innovators, but also important youth stakeholders is really being used by our team to put forward this opportunity to talk about how we are going to connect SDG 4 and SDG 17. In a way, my welcoming address has been implicitly a way of connecting the two. You know, our commitment to higher education is an expression of how UNESCO feels about the SDG 4, but certainly providing a platform for South-South cooperation is also a way of sending a clear message about our understanding of multilateralism and the role that it has to play now in our world. Now, let me just end this welcoming address by expressing my gratitude not only to the youth representatives, which are here representing different regions, different feelings, but all of them from the global south, but also for the presence of our panelists, in particular the ones who are members of our governing board. So thank you very much to all, and I hope that you will enjoy this session. Back to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Director. Let's now welcome Dr. Dameon Black. He's the president of our governing board. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Francesc. Good day to you, wherever you are, from where you join us. I want to echo and confirm Francesc's words concerning the importance of dialogue, but particularly the importance of dialogue across or within the intergenerational realities. And certainly we all have something to contribute, even as we acknowledge the voice of youth. I also want to acknowledge his emphasis on multilateralism. Part and parcel of today's webinar is an emphasis on hearing from each other and being able to set a foundation for collaboration and partnership. Certainly, these will move us forward with respect to our emphases on higher education, innovation, and particularly in the context of the Global South. It is my pleasure to be able to support important discussions among multilateral partners gathered here today and the multi-level partners gathered here today. Let me start with introducing the agenda and invitees for this South-South intergenerational divide. For the rest of the event, we will have three sets of remarks by our speakers as together we consider and as they present important topics of youth engagement to link the Sustainable Development Goals 4 and 17. We'll also have 3 rounds or opportunities for discussion involving both youth panelists and partner panelists. At the same time, we'll have 2 interactive sessions with our audiences with spontaneous engagement opportunities through the Zoom chat. And we'll be using the Menti tool, and we'll be introducing that to you shortly. I'd like to introduce our speakers and panelists, and I would ask them to indicate by just turning on their cameras and waving as I do so. Well, we have already heard from Francesc Pedró, but Francesc, greetings. We acknowledge you. Let me invite Lily Lou, if she's on, to also acknowledge. We also want to now acknowledge the youth panelists, Alejandra Ramos Gomez, Alejandra, Eugene Gatto, Laik Siddiqui. Hi, Laik. Good.
Hi.
Rafiq Amrani. Rafiq. Good. Our partner panelists, Mariam Temitope Masha. Could you mute, please, Laik?
Sure.
We also want to acknowledge Dr. Miriam Alpizar Santana, Head of Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education in Cuba, and also Deputy Chair of the Governing Board for ECOSOC. Dr. Alpizar. Joanne Grace Wang, please. Hi. Good. And Martha Ferreira, Education Specialist. Martha. I want now to proceed. There will be a change in our program. We will be proceeding to start with a Menti interactive session. Our panelist, Okan, will join us a bit later. Let me just indicate then, guest panelists, speakers, we want to invite you to contribute to exploring what is going on with the current education system and what it means, what is the meaning for innovating education. So on the screen, we're going to be sharing with you the first question via the Menti application. The question is a multiple choice question about what you think are the main challenges for higher education in the Global South. The main challenges for higher education in the Global South. There we have the questions. Multiple choice. Among the 6 options from A to F on the screen, everyone can choose up to 3 answers that you believe to be the main obstacles in higher education that shall be tackled or should be tackled in your context. For those who are unfamiliar with this tool, there are 2 options available to you. If you are using a personal computer, kindly access menti.com. That's menti.com, menti.com. And input the code that's displayed on the screen. There is the code at the bottom left, 469-25516, and I'm seeing responses already emerging. It will redirect you to the Menti survey. So please continue to make your contacts, continue to indicate your choices, your selections as the opportunity is present. 14 persons have already responded so far. There are many more on the screen, so I invite you to please make use of the opportunity. Okay, we're up to 19 responses now. Let's go. We want as many as possible persons to indicate their preferences. What are the main obstacles in higher education that should be tackled in your context? At this point in time, we are seeing two emphases contending for the primary emphasis. One concerning inequalities in access to quality educational opportunities, and the other limited funding for infrastructure, technology, research, and innovation. And then there is a close tie for the third option, but please, a few more moments. So in your experience, what are the main challenges for higher education in the global South? What are the main challenges for higher education in the global South? Vulnerable social groups, lack of targeted policies to assist and support those groups, limited availability of innovative teaching and learning methods, inequalities in access to quality educational opportunities, gender norms and stereotypes affecting educational outcomes, limited funding for infrastructure, technology, research, and innovation, and challenges in integrating local knowledge into education. Not seeing any more further indications of responses, and so I think that persons have exhausted the opportunity now. So what I will do is just summarize. Essentially, we have you are indicating that the main challenges facing higher education in the global South are: one, inequalities in access to quality educational opportunities; two, limited funding for infrastructure, technology, research, and innovation; and then third, just edging out the others, vulnerable social groups, and then the lack of targeted policies with regard to those identified within or as vulnerable. These are very revealing, but I think that with respect to each one of us, there may be no surprise with respect to the responses. Access to quality educational opportunities, bearing in mind, SDG 4 is a significant concern. And then certainly the issue of limited funding to develop the infrastructure is also raised, and then the challenge of vulnerable groups. So certainly we want to acknowledge these at this particular point in time, and I want us to bear these in mind, make note, and what we'll be doing, we will be returning to Menti to allow for further interaction in terms of the opportunities given to you to comment. So what I'm going to do now is to pause before we take the second question via Menti, and to please allow me to invite one of our speakers, Okan Dursun. And Okan is the Youth Leader for Sustainable Development Goals, Office of the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. And he brings a wealth of experience and perspectives that we now would wish for him to speak to and to share his insights, the role of youth in partnership, especially in global South context. So Okan, I now invite you to share with us, and then we will resume the Menti interaction in a bit. Okan, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here as a speaker and being part of the ECOSOC Youth Forum as a side event. I am from Istanbul, from Turkey. I don't know, is anyone just visited before to Istanbul? Just to give an idea about who am I and the story of myself, you know that 2 months ago, we just faced a big earthquake happened in our history. And when I look at the real cause of that earthquake and the existing issues that we are facing in right now, more than 50,000 people died. But is it because of the natural disaster actually, or is it because of the decisions we made selfishly? This is the question I just would like to mark up today, because it all belongs and depends on the education and the opportunities we have on our hand. The decision we made for a betterment of the world or for a destructive reason decides on what we achieve on today. So as a social entrepreneur, I am working for a tech field, educational technology field, with our company Twin Science, the vision providing quality education, supporting inclusive education for all children in the world. We are having a chance to reach out over 1 million children, over 70 countries worldwide. We both working with public sector governmental institutions like Ministry of Education in worldwide, and also private sector companies as a multi-stakeholders opportunity, which is also very important. What we are providing is STEM education, science, technology, engineering, math, by combining with sustainable development goals. All the 17 goals are also including, and all the children may learn about these topics by learning the technology we have until today. And they will use this know-how to create preventive solutions, innovative and social projects with their imagination. With that efforts we made, I also was nominated one of the 17 young leaders for sustainable development goals by United Nations. This is the reason why I am here in New York. And yesterday we had a really great meeting with UN Youth Envoy office. I'm really happy and honored to be part of the ECOSOC Youth Forum as well. I will have another panel on Thursday. So I'm super excited and see all of you here to be part of this amazing event. Before closing my words, actually, how you bring your heart to science education is important. I think this is the key solution for all, because we all know that the education system should restructure. And today's children should equip themselves with the new generational skills, which is defined as green skills right now. We don't know which skills, which jobs will come, but we know that the skills they need to equip until today to be ready for the future. Even to help today's children to choose the right profession for them, because they will be the change makers and the decision makers for the tomorrow. They will sit on the tables we are sitting right now, and they will decide critical decisions for the betterment of the world. That's why all of us here for that purpose, I would like to just sharing that how you bring your heart to science education is more important than the educational concepts, because it makes value and it decides which will come next. Otherwise, we will all face these kind of disasters we faced in Turkey, unfortunately. But more importantly, how you create preventive solutions by using the power of science with your conscience is more important, I think. Thank you very much for having me here and for your time.
Okay, thank you, Okan. We acknowledge your contribution. Let me, on behalf of all of us, extend a word of congratulations to you on your award. I want to affirm the work that you are doing and to say thank you. Let me also just note from what you have said the importance of evaluating what happens in society with respect to whether or not they are natural disasters or whether or not they relate to the decisions that we take at all levels within the governance, regulatory, and legal frameworks. And I think that that is an important point, certainly as we note and are gathered here at this time to review issues related to youth in partnership, especially in the global south. So thank you for your comments so far. We have had an excellent start. We want to acknowledge, as we said, the importance the potentials for young people, but persons of all age group within an intergenerational context and dialogue, the importance of the matter in partnership, and especially in the global south. We are far more able to partner south to north, individual countries unilaterally with other partners in the north, as opposed to seeking to extend ourselves to engage each other. So partnership is undeniably essential in identifying the challenges that are down to earth, and then creating plans that are forward-looking and implementing solutions that are sustainable. Now, as we were engaging a while ago with respect to the Menti platform and the interaction there, I'd like to invite us, having heard from Okan, to now resume with the Menti interaction, though there is another question that we have. But before we take the question, sorry, let's go back one slide, please. Just let me see the results there. Here we have, very interesting, but the trend remains the same with respect to the main challenges, primarily inequalities in access to quality educational opportunities, limited funding for infrastructure or critical matters related to the delivery of higher education, and then the vulnerable social groups. Those three remain. However, closely linked to or tied almost with vulnerable social groups is an emphasis on limited availability of innovative teaching and learning methods. And that is one of the focus areas for today's webinar. Now, let us proceed to question number 2. Question number 2. And this is very important with respect to the higher education engagement. Note, there is the code that is presented for us, 46925516. So go to menti.com and enter the code that is presented there. Question 2, for you, what does innovation in higher education look like? What does innovation in higher education look like? So we ask you to reflect personally on this question. So for example, is it improving or in contrast to traditional, do we engage in teaching, learning dimensions? So, but what does innovation in education look like? Please, we invite you to go to menti.com, enter the code 46925516 so that we might receive your responses. Please go right ahead. Okay. So the purpose of this second question is to establish a baseline on what we individually and collectively see as innovation in education. Okay. So what does innovation in education look like? What does innovation in education look like? And so far, we're seeing some interesting opportunities. Authenticity jumps out at me, adaptability, student-centered, collaborative, equal opportunities, engaging. And as your responses are coming in, we are seeing the dynamics and the relationship between the concepts change as they're reconfigured by you. Lily, I'm going to invite you, please, to unmute, turn on your camera, and just share with us your perspective on what you're seeing with respect to the responses so far to question number 2. But certainly you may respond to the feedback on question 1. Lily, please, are you able to speak?
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. Apologies, I got carried away by our really fantastic youth leader, and looking at what we have right here, I think is very straightforward. That collaborative is what we want to see moving forward, and this really echoes with what Francesc and Dameon already mentioned. We need multilateral collaboration to really improve educational outcomes. And we also see opportunities. We also see creative. We also see virtual. Let's say those three are very important in a way that it really links what young people can bring to the current realities by offering some of the new creativities that can be communicated through all different generations, but also linking from the current generation to the future generations. And it's just amazing that this keeps changing. And virtual is another very important one. I assume that a lot of people, when you mention virtual, it links to digital transformation and higher education. And adding on to what's to higher education itself, virtual is a very important factor in improving our partnership and helping everyone to stay connected, to really share information and practices moving forward. I'll pause here and give the floor back to our chair to further proceed with the session.
Okay, thank you, Lily. And certainly I want to extend appreciation to you for those insights and for certainly guiding us in the analysis of the responses to the second question. Now, friends, we all look forward to the further exploration of these topics with our panelists. Now it is time to welcome them to begin our dialogue. As mentioned earlier, this South-South intergenerational dialogue consists of 3 rounds of discussions. Our first discussion will focus on establishing the baseline to connect SDG 4 and SDG 17 across the global South, and with respect to our individual and collective contexts. We will be exploring what it means by innovative education through partnership. To begin, I will ask and address our youth panelists, but ask them this question. What is innovative learning in your national, regional, or global context? And I want to begin with Alejandra. I'm going to ask you, Alejandra, to share your knowledge, to share your perspectives, given the context of Mexico and beyond. Alejandra, please.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Muchísimas gracias a todos. It's an honor to be here and to share more about my perspective and my experience, as a Mexican woman. First, in thinking, going kind of from the regional, national, global context. In my particular situation, I grew up in the border. So for us, like innovative learning had to do a lot with bicultural exchange, by having opportunities where we could connect, and specifically with higher education institutions, and really finding that connection regardless of a border. When I think more of the national context and how innovative learning looks like in Mexico, we know there's been more priorities around virtual learning, about including technology, but I think also a really important part of innovative learning in our context, and I saw it in the Menti, was the local knowledge component. I think innovation is really important to have creativity, to really tap into people's local knowledge, into their social linguistic richness in our learners, and then how can we create better education systems that really include everything that they are and really support them, and not really trying to change what's already there. And another short thing that I wanted to share was also around project-based learning. There's been a lot of movement around that also in education, and really trying to to support students in learning in a way that makes sense to them and that really connects to their local context. So developing projects that can really support their community has been really, really innovative and just really meaningful. And in the last one, and then in the global context, I think there's so many amazing examples of innovative learning, but one of them is Transform Education, which I'm a part of, with the hosted by the United Nations Girls Education Initiative. And innovative learning for us looks like co-creation, being together, sharing our stories, sharing who we are, sharing art, and really learning from each other as youth and as members of our society. So that's my response for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated how you responded, highlighting the importance of the local context. And I go back to one of the words shared in the Menti, authenticity. And that's what I heard you emphasizing, whether it's local, national, regional, or global. It's the importance of the authentic, emphasizing the local knowledge component and validating people wherever they are. So thank you, Alejandro. We will have opportunities to engage further. Alejandro, beg your pardon, Ramos Gomez, representative of Transforming Education, which is hosted by the United Nations Girls Education Initiatives. Thank you. Next, we have Eugene Gatto Sengamungu, who's founder of the Rwanda Youth Technology Informants. And he is, as indicated, from Rwanda. And I'm now going to ask him to please share his experience, given the context of Rwanda and other countries where you have studied and worked. Eugene, please, let's welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and sharing my perspective of what innovation education means in the Rwandan context. So in Rwanda, we have this saying that Rwanda is a landlocked country. We have no access to the sea. We don't have advanced sea, like airlines that can bring in like goods. So the only resources that Rwanda has is its people. So the only resources that we have is our brain. But then do we have to wait for PhD levels to tap in our resources? So the government of Rwanda implemented the TVTs, which is like a technical vocation education training schools, where people can acquire skills at as early as high school to start applying those skills. So we are trying to tap like those resources as soon as possible. I see that as an innovative learning and something that I think the South-South, like partnership could focus on, because it helps first to minimize the costs, because you can learn at a high school level and still try to implement what you learned. If you want to continue with the universities, yes, I'm not against that. It's a good thing. We need experts in the fields, but at the same time, we need to utilize like our resources, our brain as early as possible. So in the Rwandan context, like that initiative that we need people as early as possible, I see that as innovative, learning. And when it comes to the United States, where I'm studying currently as undergraduate and soon to master's, I see innovative education as like provision of resources. Here we do have a lot of career advising. I think one of the speakers talked about being able to do what you want and being able to decide that. How do you decide that? You need some guidance. So here we have these career centers. We have like library resources. We have like very highly equipped laboratories. So like those infrastructures that facilitate application of what we learn, guide us in what we want to do, is another way of innovation learning that I've found in the West that is lacking, especially in Rwanda. But also in Rwanda, we have just with the ritual resources that we have, we're trying to apply, we're trying to apply like the knowledge we get in the school as early as possible. So like that's a way I can compare that. But I think there is much to be done on both sides to see, okay, well, we have these resources. How can we share these resources with other people? Or if we have this method in Rwanda, is it applicable in Sudan? Is it applicable in Mexico? So like that is, again, that's the whole point of like this kind of meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eugene. You have emphasized the importance of resource sharing and critical resources information that goes at the individual levels, and then certainly as we desire to improve and innovate in education. And we do appreciate the emphasis on the technical vocational with respect to that development perspective. And so that is appreciated, but more on none. We now want to turn to Leigh Siddiqui. And Leigh, could you please share your thoughts on innovative learning in India as we seek to establish this baseline? Welcome.
Thank you, Dameon Black. So it's a great opportunity to be here. And so I'll be brief about the innovative learnings in India. So, sometimes you say to thanks to the many worst things. So as for the COVID-19, something new happened here. Like digital learning platform has strengthened, and it's a really strengthened. It's a different state of the society. So initially it was if I talk about the Indian context, so there was a premier institutions in India. They have offer very good quality of education, but it is a very limited seat. It was, there millions of children, they tried to get the admission, to take the admission, but they never get it. So, but after COVID-19, these certain premier institutions, they come with the distance learning program, and which is really now a great things. Even in this, the student from the north, from the hilly area, even in the many corner of their access to the good quality of education through the premier institution without visiting the institution. So that is the great thing which has happened. It reduces the inequality even in the rural and the urban. So this is the one innovative learning took place in the recent. And also what we observed also that there has been, so the thing is, the one term has recently, introduced, like the celebrity teacher, which was never before. No, there are teachers, but they have never a celebrity like that. They are reach out for the 1,000 student, and they must be famous in one city or two city. But thanks to the COVID, now there are very famous teacher in India who become celebrities. They have a millions follower, millions, and through the social, they don't take a much fees. They don't take through just YouTube. They offer, and millions of children, they are studying quality of education as a free of course, which is really a blessing. At the country like in India, where millions of children sometimes go out of school and they drop out from the after secondary and tertiary education because of the lack of infrastructure, lack of economic problem. So again, also when it comes to partnership things, so there is also a lot of competition in terms of telecom industry, which is why we have now world cheapest data, which is why even the poor from the rural areas, from the hilly areas, from the disadvantaged communities, they have access to this quality education what someone offering, even the prominent institutions. So these are the innovative things which has took places. Even sometimes there is a lot of companies who are offering a lot of you can say the EMI options, the free laptop, a lot of offer on discount for when you are students. And also there are some of the NGOs who have come with the ideas with the self-learning packages in the through internet as self-tutorial packages where you learn it and you address the expert by the common questions and answers. So these are the innovative things which is really I'm observing, and as a part of the my Kazaronki Foundations, I see that we do a lot of teachers, we do the training and they are delivering the things. Thanks for my response.
Thank you, Leigh. Leigh is research scientist at the International Institute for Population Sciences in Mumbai and a youth leader in the UNESCO SDG 4 Youth Network. I appreciate what you said with respect to COVID-19 in that whilst it certainly wreaked havoc, caused a lot of loss of life, economic dislocation, social dislocation, etc. However, for education and other aspects of communication, it certainly accelerated the use of technology. And so this is something that we have got to affirm and to respect. And I like what you said, Leigh, that it helped to facilitate a reduction of inequity with respect to the rural urban in accessing quality education. So thank you for those insights. Next, with respect to our youth panelists and their consideration of the question, as we establish a baseline, what is innovative learning in your national, regional, or global context? We want to welcome Rafiq Amrani, who is the founder of Beyond Tech Manek, youth leader, UNESCO SDG 4 Youth Network for Algeria, Lebanon. Rafiq, please share your perspectives, Algeria, Lebanon. Welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. Thanks. Thank you for the invite. So on the national level, there has been exactly zero large-scale campaign since COVID, especially that during COVID, we really needed a campaign from the ministry or any policymaker to push people and to teach people, to incentivize teachers to use e-learning tools. And that is a very basic thing, but that could not happen because of lack of infrastructure, lack of funding, and a bit of, that's not a top priority now. And this extends to another issue, which is the perception of education within the social fabrics of some countries. However, on a regional level, I'm very glad that in Lebanon and especially in the GCC countries, the Gulf cooperation countries, there has been crazy amounts of effort put into modernizing education. They are working on the curriculum, they are working on the methods, and we can see that through, for example, forums like the IESALC, that is very respectable, and they have a great team building great things and truly innovating in the educational field according to what they need. So they're not just copying, or they are actually building from scratch for what they need. And I do believe, as Gato said, we need to share these resources. So what they have built, what they have came to, need to be shared across, because it is very easily applicable across the South. That is my take on the innovation at the national and regional level.
Okay, thanks, Rafiq. I want to note that, as you have said, that the challenges associated with the resources that you experience, some significant challenges in terms of official attitudes and the perceptions concerning education, but there are some bright spots. And you mentioned Lebanon and the countries in the, well, members of the Gulf Cooperation Council with respect to the significant investment made to modernize education with a focus on curriculum and the methodologies. So we do appreciate that contribution, initial as it is at this point in the discussion. And we look forward to the further contribution that we will make together. Now that we have heard from our youth leaders, representatives of networks across the specific regions, Mexico, Rwanda, India, Algeria, Lebanon, we now want to turn to and hear from the context of our panelists. What are their perspectives concerning the main challenges and obstacles to promoting cooperation when connecting SDG 4 and 17, SDG 4 and 17. Certainly, we have had an excellent introduction through our youth panelists as they have contextualized and share their understanding of innovative learning. So we're going to invite Mariam, and I want to invite you, Mariam, please, to share your insights from Nigeria on this critical issue. Mariam, welcome.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and it's really interesting to hear from the youth leaders as they've spoken, and I can honestly relate to everyone actually. And I hear Alejandro when she talks about, the local knowledge and us not infusing that. And I come from a background where I'm leading a team that's providing education in a conflict context. the Boko Haram insurgency in Northeast Nigeria. So the challenge of education itself is one, that's the baggage. And then we now have it layered on where we have conflicts. And we've had everything else from climate change to COVID, some decisions made by us and some natural, but as we also heard, we might want to question some of those. Now, in that whole complexity is where we're trying to provide learning and being innovative. And what I have found is that for me, innovation, it means different things to different people. But simply, my best definition is around, it's a bit of the old, a bit of the new, and a dash of surprise. And looking at it that way, you contextualize whatever your intervention is. What's going on in that environment? So there's conflict, but what can we take away from that? How do we prioritize those who are the end users, the beneficiaries? So brings us to being student-centered, but student-centered in the context of the community that we're working out of. So what does the community also bring to this? Now, once we can begin to understand or see what innovation means to each one of us, then we look at what's the line that connects us all together. And that way we can then, see how we can leverage and learn our ways to solutions together. I think that there are gaps in promoting, in sharing knowledge, what's happening in different parts. How do we share this, bring this out, and then encourage action from that? So I think for me, that's the first thing. And it really comes on helping or providing the environment where everyone can find a piece of themselves in what your solution is. Because if you don't, then you can have attitudes around, well, education, what are we meant to do? Everyone must go through 6 years of primary school, 6 years of secondary school. But in my context, I found children who, prior to the conflicts, because of one social issue or the other, have not had the access to education. But the conflict gave an opportunity for them to be found out. And within a short period of time, 3 years, I've worked with children who learned to hold a pencil at 11. And by 14, they are in secondary school. COVID also gave us an opportunity to try out digital learning platforms. We were able to work remotely, and we also were able to dispel some of the thinking that, it's a certain type of child, basically break down the barriers of inequality and lack of access. And so for me, I think it's really just, with these experiences we all have, how do we continue to have conversation, but conversation that translates to action in a way that we bring our different experiences. It's like building a house. You build a house in a marshy area, you build a house where there's solid land. At the end of the day, you need cement, you need water, you need sand, but the quantities and what you need as your foundation will differ based on where you are. But the process is largely the same. Can we share that? And I think it's finding ourselves in this and being able to tease our way out. Those for me are the main, what I would say would contribute to the main challenges or the obstacles in promoting cooperation within the space. And we also need a degree of flexibility. When we have people who are partnering, who are funding in education, I think the main thing is to know what our ultimate goal is, but allow for the localities to leverage their strengths in then developing what is required, kind of bespoke to them. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that what you have shared just cuts across what everybody has spoken so far to some degree or the other. And as you spoke, and speaking to context, I'm reminded of Alejandra's comments about the context of the border and appreciating and affirming that local reality. And indeed, all persons did highlight to some extent the importance of the immediate context. So as you said, there's a bit of the old, a bit of the new, and a dash of surprise, eh? So that's innovation. we certainly want to acknowledge that. We certainly want to acknowledge that. I think the issue though, and you said something that really struck me, is the provision of the environment where those who are participating in their learning can see themselves reflected, see their interests, their needs, their requirements reflected, and so that they will then advance, own it, and move on. And that's my takeaway from what you have said. Fantastic so far. So thank you, Mariam. We do want to acknowledge what you have said. Now we're going to go from you, Mariam, in Nigeria, and we're going to invite Dr. Miriam Alpizar Santana, who is within Cuba's Ministry of Higher Education. Miriam, I want to ask you, please, to just share on this perspective. Miriam, please go ahead.
Bueno, un gusto estar compartiendo en este espacio donde hay una combinación de jóvenes y de experiencia y también hombres, mujeres y también distintas regiones. Creo que ahí está el principal valor de este diálogo. Nosotros también tenemos esta problemática, pero creemos que el principal desafío está en crear las condiciones para aprovechar la experiencia de cada cual, las ideas de cada quien y el conocimiento de quienes los tienen. Darle espacio a los líderes del conocimiento, que no tienen que ser solamente líderes científicos. Hay líderes en el mundo del arte, de la música, de la composición, y esa oportunidad es algo que se requiere crear en nuestros países. O sea, que los jóvenes y que los niños desde la enseñanza preescolar, primaria y media tengan la oportunidad de desarrollar aquellas condiciones que les son propias y que aspiran y tengan esa oportunidad. Ese es un desafío importante y creemos que para eso se requieren políticas públicas y se requieren planes y programas de estudio que tengan ese componente. Que rompamos un poco esa manera de enseñar tradicional, la clase, la tarea, y que hayan espacios para todos los gustos. Hay algo que llamamos acá y que es una experiencia buena y que es la orientación vocacional. Y es desde los distintos sectores del conocimiento, se hacen unas sesiones de promover por qué la física, por qué la química, por qué el arte, por qué algunos jóvenes tienen que ser bomberos, por qué otros tienen que ser agricultores, por qué otros tienen que intentar ir al cosmos. Y eso es una posibilidad que los niños desarrollan entonces su vocación innovadora y generan allí las mayores ideas que están justamente en la infancia, en la adolescencia. O sea, creo que ese es el principal desafío, que se creen las bases, las condiciones para que desde los niños, los jóvenes puedan aportar sus ideas. Y muy importante, la multidisciplinariedad. No hay solución para problemas que no tengan la participación de distintas ramas de la ciencia. En el mundo ya de la más técnico, más complejo, se requiere la multidisciplinariedad y eso a los jóvenes le viene de maravilla cuando usted mezcla las facultades, las carreras, los programas de las ciencias técnicas, naturales, sociales. Se crea una muy buena sinergia para la innovación. Por ahí anda nuestra impresión, nuestra intención y nuestro camino también complejo y lleno de obstáculos, pero que vamos saltando. Gracias.
Thank you, Miriam. Again, we appreciate your comments and speaking from the experience in Cuba, breaking the traditional mold of education, breaking that traditional mold and approach to learning, but inviting all the disciplines, all the experiences to come together so that we can learn from each other. And as you said, that multidisciplinarity. So thank you. In that regard, you are emphasizing and agreeing with the others concerning the need for flexibility, as using Mariam's word. So thank you. We now have another contribution from forgive me, Grace, but Zojwan, Trust Fund Director, UN Office for South Cooperation. And we invite you now to share on this issue, main challenges or obstacles from your experience and perspective. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dameon. Just call me Grace to make life easier. Yeah, thank you. I have learned so much from your insights just now. I certainly agree that the top challenges are inequality and also lacking of funding to infrastructure technology. But I would like to emphasize something underlying all these challenges. I think it's still a lacking of collaboration. It's so heartening to see young people voted that higher education being innovative, meaning, first of all, being collaborative. I think this is the spirit that we need to learn from the next generation. We need to make the young generation a generation of cooperators. Looking at the world today, cooperation and collaboration is the key to many of the issues that we face. However, if you think about the old generation thinking and the bigger geopolitics, you see many still consider opportunities is a zero-sum game. But actually, it's not. Today, with technology, with digital transformation, the more we collaborate, the more opportunities we can create. And that helps us to also address the inequality issue. So this generation, we feel that the young people are more and more into collaborating. And since the dialogue is intergenerational, I do feel that the world needs to look up to the young people and to learn from this collaboration spirit and to fundamentally change the rule of game. So that is what I feel, which is more fundamental to all the challenges that surface. Now come back to something more practical. I work in the office with a mandate very proudly to promote cooperation, South-South cooperation, meaning cooperation among developing countries, often also involve collaboration with developed countries through triangular cooperation. And I manage the trust funds and programs directly supporting communities and people on the ground. So from my work experience, if we think about the education sector, there's a lot of challenges in terms of how to connect the local knowledge with the regional policy schemes, with the national development strategies, with global platforms. Some of you are the luckiest ones that can benefit from the platforms that provided to young people, like the ECOSOC Youth Forum, like we also from our office, we organize Global South-South Development Expo, and there are young people participating. The recent Least Developed Countries 5 conference also have the youth track, but all this are still up in the air and not close enough to the communities, the local knowledge. And that's why when we see the survey results, there are two things that we can combine. One is lack targeted policies for vulnerable community. The other challenge is lacking of integrating local knowledge. So these two are connected. Because of lacking local knowledge adaptation, then the policies cannot be really targeted and benefiting the people in need. So if we put these two together, I do encourage policymakers and young people, as the beginning that Francisco said, right? Policy making process and trust funds, programs, all these important initiatives needs to have a flat playground to be able to make things more horizontal and let not beneficiaries, but everybody become more partners to co-create programs. And that way, I think from very practical method of co-design, co-creating, to touch the actual fundamental challenge of collaboration. So just a short sharing of some ideas, and I hope have more opportunities to talk about concrete actions that we have done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But let me give you 30 seconds just to speak with one concrete action that you have done. One concrete action.
Yes, I think I would like to introduce this Youth for South initiative that our office is working with partners to launch. And that initiative is bring people, young people from the Global South to come up with their own ideas for sustainable development, and then to exchange with each other, but also to share, collaborate with young people from other countries across border and co-create programs, projects. At the same time, intergenerational will bring in mentors from the industry, from other developing countries to work together. So that is one initiative that can bring ideas across generation, across borders.
Right.
And young people and policymakers meeting together. But it's just one of the initiatives, and I think the scale is an issue that we need more of such actions. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's how do we scale up those actions, those activities that impact, that have proven that they're of benefit. And each person has shared so far the importance of that challenge of connecting local knowledge with those at the center, the power structures, so that that local knowledge can influence for the benefit of all. So thank you. Thank you, Grace, for your contribution. And we heard you concerning the projects that will emerge. And I think that what you have said connects with what Francesc said at the outset, namely the role of UNESCO in facilitating dialogue, be it within the levels or intergenerationally, so that we could all benefit. And you have therefore now allowed me to invite Francesc to return to us and for him to share his perspective, given his experience in higher education, the development of education policy, and then certainly your work, Francesc, in the Latin American Caribbean region. What do you have to say to us? How do we benefit from this experience concerning the obstacles that hinder cooperation in the achieving linkages between SDG 4 and 17? Francesc.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, first thing I would like to say is that I'm learning a lot. I mean, it's really impressive, and I'm convinced that this kind of opportunities should be happening more often. So thank you very much, particularly for conducting this in a really interactive way. Now, having said that, and looking more into the specific area of higher education, I have to say that there are very important challenges also for us that prevent our, I would say, youth from really benefiting from South-South cooperation. Let me give you an example. I mean, if you take the figures for international mobility of higher education students, you will easily see that this is really the privilege of a few. If you look into the figures for Latin America and the Caribbean, I have to say that less than 1% of all higher education students benefit from some sort of mobility. And having said that, how many of them go to the Global South? Well, I have to say that less than 20%. So, so we have really a challenge here and the challenge is how to really embed this South-South cooperation in higher education as a priority for our youth. And I think that one way in which we can really make this happen is to ensure that in particular agencies like UNESCO, maybe others, I mean, I'm really glad to meet Grace now for the first time. So, and glad to hear what she was saying. I think that our agencies, which may not have really a lot of resources, can be considered as platforms where we can empower youth activists, youth leaders, or that they, in a way, contribute to capacity development of other leaders, just making sure that there is a kind of a flow of exchanges across the global South. And one of the most important things that they can do now is to help us to promote the right to education. And when it comes to that, I think that really getting to know how youth activists are promoting, or are contributing to the enforcement of this right, that will be really a powerful tool to make sure that this right is really not only recognized in laws, but actually, enforced by practice. I think that this is just an example. So our commitment from UNESCO would be to contribute to the development of platforms in which, youth contribute in a peer learning environment to develop the capacities of other youth, just to make sure that they contribute to the enforcement of the right, the universal right to education, whatever this means in each context. That's up to them to decide. Thank you. Back to you, Dameon.
Thanks, Francesc. Thank you. And it's striking. I know we have heard the data, we have seen it, if we have read anything concerning mobility. The fact, as you said, it's a privilege. It's a privilege. I therefore acknowledge what the importance of what Lake said, given the Indian experience, that technology helped to reduce the gaps in inequity and facilitated access, thus allowing for sort of virtual mobility. And so again, we appreciate that. But the importance of understanding the linkages that we should have, South to South cooperation and facilitating South to South mobility based on quality and those engagements. So thank you, Francesc. We have our final panelists, and we want to ask Martha Perede, who is the education specialist on SDG 4 Global Cooperation Section and the Interagency Secretariat of UNESCO. Martha, we welcome and we want to hear your thoughts on this very important question concerning the challenges and barriers to innovation and achieving SDG 4 and 17. Martha.
Thank you so much. And also thank you for the invitation to be on this important panel and speak on this important topic. So for me, actually, it has a lot to do with relevance. So one of the obstacles is actually ensuring that the partnerships are between the different actors are value added, are truly value added. So while partnerships could be an effective tool to advancing the SDG 4s, there really needs to be clarity around the roles, around the responsibilities, and then as well as the alignment between the shared goals and objectives. So clarity and relevance. And then there's been a lot of conversation about multilateralism. So I would argue that actually the current multilateralism system, it's adequate, but there are serious obstacles. And so there's challenges that exist both at the local level, country level, at the global level. So for instance, this can include anything from coordination between the stakeholders, lack of alignment with local priorities, and as many of you have said, and I will echo, a lack of funding, especially during this time of scarce resources. And then also globally, the multilateral financing system is quite challenged. So you can sometimes have a situation where you have these unproductive competition between multilateral partners, again, going for this limited funding, and then you have this fragmentation of resources, you have duplication efforts. And so this is just an inefficient and ineffective use of these resources. And ultimately, this impacts the effectiveness of the education initiatives and partnerships that can occur in and across countries.
Okay, thank you. May I just ask you a question? Just in response to what you said. The unnecessary competition between the multilateral funders, certainly waste of resources, etc. Is it that, given the scarcity of the sources of funding that they will be able to access to pass on, that this merely represents a battle for relevance that is really wasteful? So perhaps us flipping that emphasis on relevance that you shared, that the multilateral bodies who fund, they're also engaged in this battle for relevance so that they might generate their own resources. How do we overcome that?
That's a very good question. That is a very good question. And I think there needs to be, among the multilaterals also, conversations and dialogues and already partnerships around at that level, so that so that they can work together and collaboratively as opposed to competitively, because it's a zero-sum game at that point. And so I mean, you make a very, very good and astute point. So
yeah, this is one of the challenges. I think that certainly, if we reflect on what Mariam said, that in the context of conflict, in the chaos, but it is really the recognition that, hey, there is no other option but to be cooperators, as Grace said. Is this appreciation that this has to be, if it is, that we're going to survive and to get ahead. And so I think as you said, the discussion has really been rich. Discussion has been significant. And so we want to just acknowledge that. All right. Thank you. The conversation has been proceeding very well. And we do have now to proceed quickly. It's about another 30 minutes or so left for this conversation. For the next round of debate, we want to focus on the initiatives already in place, connecting SDG 4 and 17. And so we want to really address our partner panelists in understanding from a macro level on what it means for the institution, ministry, organization promoting innovative education. How are youths involved in the partnership? So what are the current practices with respect to innovative learning? Francesc, we're going to begin with you. Please, could you just give us a response to this question, please?
Oh. Yes, thank you. I think that when it comes to us, I would like to say that UNESCO, and particularly our institute, has been promoting, opportunities for youth to express their voices. And I think that this is really important. Now, we have really a challenge, which is connecting the dots. I mean by that, we are still based, of course, in Latin America and the Caribbean. And one of the most important challenges for us is that we have a global mandate. So really making sure that we connect, with Asia, with sub-Saharan Africa, with the Arab countries is really an important challenge when it comes to that, because I think that in higher education, usually what happens is that our landscape is already populated with the privileged ones, and we need to make sure that we put at the service of the majority, the blessings that we all have in higher education. So for us, I would like to say that we have done quite a bit, but my feeling is that looking into the future, UNESCO, in particular, our institute, has to work more with youth, because higher education is not only for them, it belongs to them. Thank you, Dameon.
Okay, thank you, Francesc. Your response is appreciated. Martha, we're back to you again. How do you respond to this issue? Martha?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we're hearing you now.
Great. So I want to say that youth, I'm coming from the perspective of the Global Cooperation Mechanism and the Interagency Secretariat. So youth actually were at the heart of the Transforming Education Summit in September 2022, and they continued to be fully engaged in the follow-up to the summit. And the global initiative is something that we are developing, and actually was developed alongside youth and under the coordination of the SDG4 Youth Network. And it's the first multi-stakeholder global initiative aimed at ensuring meaningful youth engagement and leadership in education policymaking. And so we're working with many partners, including OSCE, of course, UNESCO, Global Education Monitoring Report, UNHCR, the Global Student Forum, and of course, your organization as well. So we're very pleased about that. And in terms of other partnerships for youth, one of the global initiatives that came out of the Transforming Education Summit was this greening partnership, so greening education partnership. And so young people are actively engaged. And we have the Greening Education Partnership, which was actually launched by Japan and the UK, and also UNESCO. And so the goal of this initiative is to engage learners to promote inclusive, sustainable development and tackle the environmental emergencies currently happening. And there's actually 50 partners that have joined, and youth are actually included as active members. They're on the advisory board and they're participating actively in the working groups. And this actually includes the working groups actually include efforts to include greening into the curriculum of higher education institutions. So it's quite exciting, and we consider youth to be absolutely our partners.
All right, thank you, Martha. Excellent. And that last project that you spoke of, it does have the potential to be significantly impact in terms of the outcome. So thank you for sharing that. All right, we look forward to further. Grace, please speak to the question. Youth, partnerships with youth, the prospects as we move forward.
Yeah, okay, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce a few funds and programs that we are supporting young people. In our office, we manage the UN Fund for South-South Cooperation. And just now, when I mentioned the Youth for South initiative, this is supported by the UN Trust Fund for South-South Cooperation to engaging young people, work with young people from other countries. It has a scholarship program, and it has supporting young women scientists to pursue advanced research and be mentors and inspirers for other women in this field. Also, we have India UN Development Fund and Development Partnership Fund. For example, that fund supported projects in Nicaragua in partnership with UNICEF to launch the master's degree program in special education to improve the inclusiveness of higher education. And that's also based on successful learning and knowledge sharing from other countries like Paraguay, Brazil, Jamaica, Uruguay. So the knowledge gained in one country is shared with the region as well. Also, for example, I think when we're talking about innovation, often the time we focus so much on digital technology. We forgot some new application of traditional technologies can also be innovative. Some simple technologies or simple ways of changing people's life is also innovative. For example, India, Brazil, South Africa come together to form a IPSA fund. And that fund supported a project I always use as a good example. In Malawi and Zambia, it enabled over 2,000 girls, they are child marriage victims, survivors, they come back to school. And by providing the girls with bicycles, you give them a new chance of safely going to school. And so this is seemingly very traditional, very simple technique of solving local problems. And this is innovative. So I wanted us also to think about programs that not only focusing on digital technology, but also don't forget indigenous and traditional ways of living that can help people around. So we talked about collaboration and competition. I always feel this is just the two sides of a coin. A certain level of competition is also very good, and collaboration is essential. So let me give you an example of something that we did that combined these two. We partner with ITU to launch the digital challenge during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we invite young entrepreneurs to share their digital solutions to address social, economic, public health issues during the pandemic. It is a competition. So basically, we have judges and we select those projects that are scalable, and we pair them with further knowledge sharing experiences and mentorship. However, we emphasize in the competition, we prioritize those that have the collaboration elements. Like you work with your partners from another country, you help to address issues cross-border, or you show a clear prospect of working with others so competition and collaboration can be minced together for a better outcome. And multilateral institutions do have the issue of sometimes over competitive. That's why I believe in, a certain level of coordination is necessary and useful. And for that, our UN Office for South-South Cooperation has the mandate of coordinating the system-wide effort in support South-South cooperation. We launch strategies to, guide the agencies. We have interagency working mechanisms. We also encourage all the trust funds, South-South Trust Fund, to have, collaborative programs among UN agencies. And here, South-South cooperation has a golden key. Its fundamental principle is demand-driven. So from the partner country's perspective, the program country's perspective, they don't care whether it is, which UN entity. When they propose for a proposal, we ask them to let us know who you think can add best value. Example, in Samoa, the government actually chose two agencies to work together. UNESCO and UNDP work together on a digital society project. So I think demand-driven, if we truly believe in that and put it in practice, then it helps us to resolve a lot of issues of, collaboration, coordination, competition. Thank you so much.
Excellent, Grace. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to ask you, if you would, since you spoke to public health challenges that are affecting, but violence is certainly one of them. And I note from what you referenced there about youth child brides, and Grace, that program. It's very important. But what would you say with respect to Mariam's issue in working in Nigeria, north of the country, where the activities of Boko Haram are? What respect to any programs or initiatives that would be able to partner with groups working in such a context?
The signal was not very clear just now. You mean Maria, right? The issue.
No, I'm speaking to you, Grace. Are you hearing me?
Now
Okay.
I can hear you. The question, can you repeat?
No, just quickly. Just the issue of, for example, Mariam working in Nigeria with respect to the violence issues they're confronting children in conflict. Then I just wondered if you could just a quick response to any programs or initiatives, partnerships with groups working in such context of conflict?
Oh, yes, I think that is a very difficult issue. And in South-South cooperation, a lot of the Southern partners emphasizing poverty reduction issues, but the nexus between development and conflicts and, you know, peace, sustaining peace is not yet entered into the mainstream of their support. Yeah, but it's very important.
Got you. But we do have to engage it, and so certainly I'm glad she's on the platform, because to introduce that issue will certainly stimulate further reflection. And as Francesc said, in the conference towards the end of the year. Miriam, to Cuba, what are the partnerships? You have a rich history of partnership and engaging youth. Please share.
Sí, hay un tema bien importante para nosotros, bien complejo, y es el tema de la financiación. Y por tanto, con esa barrera, con ese obstáculo, nosotros hemos trabajado en saltarla, encontrando alianzas y participando en redes, proyectos, asociaciones, que financian determinadas iniciativas. Y así se han preparado jóvenes en distintas ramas también del conocimiento, en algunas becas en el exterior, y también se han preparado en Cuba para participar en concursos, obteniendo galardones importantes en distintas ramas del conocimiento, en el deporte, en la música, en la programación, todo este tema de la informática, en matemática, en física, y eso ha sido preparando jóvenes con iniciativas innovadoras como parte de sus planes y programas de formación, que insisto, no solo incluyen los currículos básicos de la formación primaria, media, secundaria, sino que la selección de jóvenes talentos ha permitido prepararlos y presentarse a determinados concursos internacionales obteniendo premios. Eso ha sido una alternativa. Y también están las redes de colaboración que no son competitivas, sino participar junto con otros países, especialmente europeos, en solución de determinados problemas de la ciencia. Y también hay convenios entre gobiernos para respaldar becarios financiados por algunos gobiernos también de Europa, pero también de Latinoamérica, en estancias de investigación, de posgrado y también en el pregrado. O sea, creo que nosotros hemos tenido que trabajar con la iniciativa y la innovación en la gestión, o sea, en el método, en cómo encontrar, no estar apartado del mundo por una situación de financiamiento. Y así tenemos disímiles experiencias muy valiosas en todas las ramas del conocimiento, y que ojalá fueran más, y ojalá que toda nuestra movilidad fueran más. Hay muchas también a título institucional, a título de gobierno, pero hay muchas también a título individual, que bueno, andan por ahí, por el mundo. Cuba es muy pequeña, 11 millones de habitantes, una isla, pero hay cubanos en muchas partes, y siempre que están incluso trabajando, se han preparado en Cuba y están trabajando con buenos resultados en algunos países, eso nos hace sentir orgullosos, porque pensamos que se prepararon para servirle a la humanidad, al mundo, donde quiera que estén. Y entonces, bueno, ese es nuestra idea, y seguimos preparando más. Esa es la intención. Gracias.
Fantastic, thank you. And it's a continuation of the internationalist perspective. Thank you. You have rich experience, as you have said, and I think that certainly the partnership and emphasis on scientific research, given the valuable experience that you have, in dealing with barriers, in dealing with in dealing with challenges, and certainly in dealing with an environment that is obstructionist. So we do acknowledge all of this, and we appreciate what you have said. So the provision of financing and scholarships, the Cuban emphasis, and we want to acknowledge that. So thank you, Miriam. Now, Mariam, we now return to you, and we invite you to share your response with respect to the issue of partnerships. Mariam.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, it's very rich and engaging conversations, and it's a bit from everyone. Well, from my experience, I've worked in a special intervention, is what I would say, because it's responding to education in conflict, but it is something that we designed it to be led by the private sector, enabled by the government, supported by the community. So it brings in different parts of everything. But in rolling out the intervention, of course, we had no blueprints. And we needed to, it's at this point you need to make it or break it, right? We had to learn very quickly, and it started with a lot of observation and learning. And we made it in such a way that it was student-centered and centered around the student, led by them. So a lot of observation, journaling, beginning to sieve out, what trends we could see, what the needs were, how they differed, and what brought them together. And putting this, by the time you put the young people, and indeed children in some cases, at the heart of this, your solutions come out, because it is they that need this. And we didn't go in with thinking we had the answers, because we didn't. So it was learning from them, and that's how we've been able to, I think would say that the project that we've worked on is a proof of concept of how theory actually goes into action, because it's everything I've heard here now in terms of engaging youth and having them at the table. What we've been able to do is kind of work that the other way around, and having them hands-on to a point where we're proof of what can actually happen when you bring in young people on board. So from digital to just innovation, even around trying to get a child into class, and knowing that that child with Boko Haram, meaning, education, Western education is forbidden, but bringing that child into class by starting from faith. I go to Arabic school, I hold a book, I wear nice dress when I'm going. So we slowly introduce uniforms, Arabic lessons, Bible study, and from there we're able to then complement with formal, not Western education. But there's no way I would know that. But I would hear that from a child sharing his experience. I would hear that from a young person who was in the thick of all of this, sharing experiences, and then drawing out what the solutions will be. So I think for me, it's the opportunities are immense. We just need to be able to step back, be flexible, collaborate, listen. And one of the exciting things that we are doing, and I just wanted to throw this out there, is that we are actually we're working on a documentary film now with the Center for Social Innovation at Queen's University. And the idea is to interrogate what we have done. That's the model that we've essentially co-created, so that we can ask a few questions. What did we do? How did we do it? And can this be replicated? So that it will speak to sharing knowledge with the Global South. What have we done? What was successful? And doing this, honestly, making ourselves as vulnerable as it is. And it's interesting because I think some of the people on this panel might be people I would reach out to at some points to get their inputs on such work, because it's all about enriching the conversations, but more importantly, moving from just talking and moving to action in a way that it's impactful and it's sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. So placing youth at the center, Lake, could you please share with respect to this issue? Thank you.
I would say in the regional sector, so we have a lot of public partnership has been took place in the context of education arena. So for example, there's a lot of Tata Institute, one institution, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Asoka University, Azim Premji Universities, which is established by great philanthropists from the India. So for example, what
on mute. Not hearing you. Not hearing you. Maybe the connection is poor.
Okay.
Okay.
Is
good.
it okay?
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, for example, I would say for the Azim Premji, the foundation, what they do, that so the school focuses on the providing quality of education, like the children from the especially marginalized communities. So they collaborate with the certain NGOs, government agencies, as well as the school. They train to the school trained teachers, providing support to the schools in especially the remote areas. And also they conduct a lot of research and the education policies and the practices to improve the education outcome, and which is really, but the problem is that, the thing is that we need this much work, but in the reality, we are doing this. So this is the, bottleneck of the problem. Other than that, we see a lot of initiative also by some of the federal government when they started giving the digital devices as free of cost as the election campaign. So that really helps. And for example, if I would say that even from my PhD dissertations, I also find there are the communities who are really marginalized when their children, they get the free digital laptops. And so this somehow they come from this, intergenerational education upward mobility. It's like from they have a suit up in terms of upward mobility, in terms of education, by giving only the just some amount of from the government to the digital devices, that really change also. And also if I give the example of my own the NGO where we are associated with that, this is the one area, the ecological part is in the India and the Bangladesh border known as the Sundarban area. It's a closely greenery area. So there are a lot of peoples, their livelihood depends on, they used to go in the you can from the creek area, they catch the crab. The crab are mostly they grab the bees honey. So while they do this, so a lot of tigers, they come and they attack them. So somehow they lost their parents. So the many children, they lost their parents, so they become orphans. So we are on ground, what we are doing that we establish a school there, and we figure out the students who are completely orphans, and so initially we started giving the direct money to those families, but then laterally we realized that this collaboration does not work, because this family, they are really needy, and so they never expend those money in terms of education, so they do some other activities. So now what we figure out in the other institution, we collect the crowdfunding, and we do that local teachers, we figure out the local teachers in those who are living area, and we give direct them money. And also it's not easy to figure out the teacher. Once you figure out the teacher, then again problem, the teachers are not skilled in those areas, and then you have to give on the work on the training program on those teachers. So we started this teacher training program with the support of the certain NGOs who are really working that. So those are the initiative really working. So now we have figured out that if you do that, if you figure out, if you help those children who are orphans, so they really wanted to come out from their low intergenerational education poverty cycles. They really wanted to, so they wanted to change their occupation, which their father has been done. So the thing is that when they wanted to change the occupation, so they need to the education mobility. So through education mobility only they can mobilize their occupation. So these are the things, so which is why the organization is establishing a lot of computer center also, and schools also, and also we are connected some of the local government institution which is already there, but they are not aware about that. Some skill training program, so we are connecting those things. So these kind of intervention program need a lot of things. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Lake. So we need concrete actions. Rafiq, this is our third and final discussion. Rafiq, what I'm going to ask you to do for me is, could you just speak quickly to the whole issue of the support needed from higher education and other educational stakeholders to build transformative partnerships? I know you spoke earlier about the GCC and some of those activities there, but quickly.
Yeah. So if we are talking about building and engaging these stakeholders from higher education, we need to think about it in different dimensions. We have the first dimension, which is resources, and which is like the most crucial one, especially financial resources that needs to be deployed and also to be coordinated. The second fold that we need to think about is clear policies and regulations that encourage and support collaboration between institutions. And that includes policies related to intellectual property, data sharing, and accreditation to, again, avoid a common problem that we've spoken about, which is the competition to be relevant, an organization competing to be more relevant than another one, and also making sure that they understand that it is not a zero-sum game, that we all can be relevant in our own domains. A third dimension that we can think about is capacity building, and that is in terms of the training and the capacity building programs that are provided to faculty, staff, and students. Because from my own experience, if you put great policies or great programs on paper, that is great, but implementing them actually is the hardest part, and training people on that is very tricky. And that is why also we need to think about a fourth dimension, which is the evaluation and assessment, or monitoring and evaluation. And that should be included in these policies and these programs, mechanisms to evaluate the effectiveness and the efficiency of these collaborative learning initiatives. Last but not least, we also need to think about how to convey all of this to the broader public, so that everyone would be valuing these initiatives at their real value and actually see their impact. And that's why we need to work also on the community engagement. And that is also including building partnerships with local communities, grassroots movements, and that's all to create a relevant and impactful learning experience for whether secondary or even or post-secondary learning settings.
Fantastic.
So I think, yeah, it would be around these main themes.
Okay, fantastic. Capacity building is appreciated, but that community engagement and information sharing important. Alejandra, what would the elements of this transformative partnerships look like, briefly?
Yes. Well, very connected to what Rafiq mentioned, definitely funding, resources, high quality training. But I was also thinking of time. I was an educator. I taught for 7 years, and many times whenever I was asked to implement something, I didn't have the time to actually internalize and reflect. So when I think about what is needed, I think there's a need for spaces, for conversation, for reflection, for time to really think about what's happening, and then really have the time to think about what is needed in this specific context. And yeah, just being open to it, and definitely the funding, the partnerships, but having partnerships from an initial stage instead of collaboration, moving to co-creation from the brainstorming, from the action, and also the evaluation and what comes after.
Okay, fantastic. I've never thought of time as you said it there, but it's absolutely important. So thank you for that. Eugene, to you. Could you please share?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think my fellow panelist has said much of what I have said, but to sum up this, well, I think as South like countries like this, I think we have chances that developed countries do not have. Like as developing countries, we have this chance to develop together, right? So if we are sharing these resources, we have to come together as a team. But how do we do that? It's a very tricky question. You know, we are like dealing with either being the next Einstein or applying the Einstein law of relativity. What has worked in Mexico, can it work in Rwanda? So like Rwanda, in my perspective, has chosen to apply the laws, not to find the next Einstein. So get these resources. We need those infrastructures in place. But then as a youth, what is our law? We need to be the informants. So that's the whole reason like of Rwanda Youth Take Informants. Like informants, I mean, I like being in the military. Informants, they're a very crucial component of like whatever war we were fighting. Now we are fighting education war. So we need informants as a youth. But to be able to work, we need infrastructures. So to sum up, I would say, yes, it's a trick question. It's a very difficult task, but we need informants, we need infrastructures, and we need, yes, to find the new Einsteins, but more important, to apply the laws of Einsteins. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent, Eugene, and we do appreciate it. Now, all of this is being captured and recorded, and so we certainly will be reflecting and taking the time, Alejandra, to make sure that we learn the lessons appropriately and as we go forward. So thank you. Miriam, we have heard the youth. Any response, Miriam from Cuba? Any response to the matter here about the support required? I mean, you already spoke about finance. Would that be the same?
Se requiere también, además del apoyo del gobierno, se requiere un sector empresarial innovador en alianza con las universidades. Las universidades también requieren trabajar programas de doctorado que puedan aunar ramas del conocimiento y en sus centros de investigación fortalecer patentes, registros, propiedad intelectual. Y yo creo que es muy importante que esta ciencia constituida no se quede en paper, no se quede en libros como habitualmente pasa, sino que tenga una salida en innovación. Innovación, dígase en el sentido amplio de la palabra, en el sector público, en el sector también empresarial, y que tenga un resultado que aporte a la economía y a la sociedad. Y ese es un reto y un desafío grande para las universidades. Hay una modalidad que se utiliza en varios países emergentes que está referida a la creación de unidades organizativas dinamizadoras de la innovación en las universidades. Dígase la creación de interfaces, parques científicos tecnológicos, fundaciones donde se generen ideas, haya un semillero de ideas que dinamicen nuevos proyectos empresariales y que realmente sean los resultados que espera la economía y la sociedad en los contextos locales. O sea, siempre adecuado a las necesidades que tiene cada región, de acuerdo a sus niveles de desarrollo, de acuerdo a la economía que más sea desarrollada allí o que más desarrollo requiera, dígase si es el turismo, la minería, los temas de la ecología, medioambientales, en fin. O sea que creo y significo que son grandes los retos que tiene la educación superior, pero yo creo que lo más importante es tener conciencia de ello, es tener conocimiento y es que la universidad juegue su papel de creadora de capacidades allí en los contextos locales donde productores, empresarios requieren de esas capacidades. Y yo siempre insisto en cualquiera de las ramas del conocimiento porque significa no dejar nada atrás, no dejar a nadie atrás y siempre tener oportunidades para esas zonas más vulnerables, que es parte también de la misión de la universidad, o sea, transformar la sociedad sacando a esas personas vulnerables de la situación y siempre con una mirada muy particular a las mujeres, al enfoque de género, a esa necesidad de que la mujer también sea parte activa del desarrollo de sus comunidades. Por ahí anda en lo que estamos en la Universidad Cubana y en lo que sabemos que es un reto y un desafío, y estamos compartiendo con ustedes las gratas experiencias que nos presentan y que nosotros también le estamos transmitiendo. Gracias.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I like that concerning the universities as creators of capabilities. That's an excellent response. Thank you. We note the time. Essentially, we had promised you that we would have ended just now, but we do have a few more matters that we'd like just to squeeze in to ensure that we complete the process. So please, could you just give us allow us that time and be patient with us just for a few more moments. We'll soon be ending. I would like to ask, therefore, Martha, could you please just share in terms of the partnerships, the elements that would be required to build transformative partnerships that promote innovative learning? If you had anything else you'd like to add to what you said before.
I'll just say something quickly, but I'll share a poem, one of my favorite quotes by Grace Nichols, and she says, I've crossed an ocean, I have lost a tongue, from the root of the old one, a new one has sprung. And for me, it's so reflective of so many things, including the new sort of tongues that we need to find in order to communicate with each other, coming from such different perspectives. And so I just want to add that just to share with you a little bit about the global cooperation mechanism, which really is sort of all these people speaking in different tongues, if you will, because it is basically a coordination body of so many actors, including teachers, including education ministers, including multilaterals, and student organizations. We actually have 2 young people on the Sherpa and Leaders group, and so here we are coordinating at a global level, being able to work together rather than in competition with each other, but rather sort of collaborating and doing amazing things. So for instance, I am happy to share with you, and I'll put a little link, that we were in December, they actually passed a decision to have the first ever youth engagement indicator. So for the first time, countries will have to report on how they're engaging youth in policy and decision making. So this is huge, and I'm happy to share more information. And I'll stop there, and also to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Thank you. We do have we have received some rich information, as I indicated. Unfortunately, time has really caught up with us. So we do have one final element. Lily, do we proceed with the mentee voting? Please just guide me in this regard. Francesc?
Sure.
Do we go ahead? Okay, please go ahead. What we're going to be having now is that we want the youth panelists just to respond to this final set of questions. And Lily's going to post them for you, so we can just ask you just to share your thoughts as to which questions we ask.
So the mentee is being pulled up right now. Yeah, thank you so much for being patient with us, and thank you so much for this really stimulating conversation. It's a conversation about partnership, and look at all the partners that we have and the different stakeholders really getting together and trying to figure out a way forward. And we see a lot of synergy. We see a lot of really crossovers that people try to move forward together. And if this is the case, let's really hope that we can move them into actions after this session. So now let's move to mentee and see what are some of the final questions we can divert to our panelists. So for our youth panelists, there will be 3 questions that you can choose from. You only choose the one that you're most curious about. Okay, so the three questions are, have you had any role models or mentors who have provided intergenerational support in transforming and innovating education? Second, how are you already contributing to multi-level partnership in higher education within the Global South through your own project and advocacy? And third, what role do you see technology playing in fostering innovative learning and higher education in the Global South? So I know it's a tough decision because we probably all want to know all the answers, but we have to do it really quick. But I'm going to put a 30-second timer. And after that, it's settled, and we'll have the one that has the most attention to ask our youth leader. So ready, go. Well, let's see, we already have the third question on the role of technology really standing out. The reality may change. But for all the further questions that you have, please follow up with us after the session, and we'd be happy to keep you informed on any storytelling sessions with our youth leaders who would be happy to share their role model and mentor stories on the whole intergenerational collaboration, as well as their own innovation in technology, as well as their own advocacy that involves other stakeholders. So 30 seconds is up. I guess the technology question stands out. So we'll only be able to take one or two youth panelists to answer how you see the role of technology in fostering innovative learning and higher education in the Global South.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lily. Rafiq, could you answer that question for us, please? What are your thoughts where this is concerned? What role do you see technology playing in fostering innovative learning?
Sure. Building on what my colleague said before, the role of technology nowadays is mostly to close the gap of discrepancies between whether geographies or socioeconomic classes. So I really see that technology being used as a leverage to democratize innovative learning, to democratize access to information in a meaningful way, in an impactful way. That is one. And second, it could also be as a mean to network and as a mean to bring together youth, to allow peer learning, to allow youth building together ventures. And that is also very important in the South-South Union.
Thank you. Thank you. Alejandra, would you like to add to that?
Yes, of course. And I love sharing after Rafiq because I feel like we have very similar ideas. So yeah, talking about that, definitely I think it can support place-based education. It can support connection among youth. But I think another very important piece is the creativity. I think that technology is such a wonderful tool to allow youth to express themselves in a way that makes sense to them. And I know that there's so many amazing now like technology features, programs that allow students to express and create products that are authentic, that represent who they are, and that are also context specific.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Now I know Lily has another set of questions that you'd like to use for the mentee to be able to moderate and define. But Lily, I hope you don't mind me just using the position as chair, just to select one question and ask. I would like to ask Mariam, what policy or regulatory changes do you think are needed to promote the role of learners and higher education institutions in innovative learning? What policy or regulatory changes would be required? Mariam, are you there with us? Eugene? Well, I'm going to ask you then just to respond to that. What policy or regulatory changes are required? What do you think?
All right, thank you so much. I'll take a direct example from Rwanda. Like the government of Rwanda, like President Kagame specifically, he's a very advocate for the youth involvement. So seeing like senior leaders, like being actively engaged in wanting the youth to contribute, motivate the young people. So like I think like these officials, government officials, should be also like open to that kind of like, you know, idea, putting infrastructures in place. So that's the whole thing of like, you know, Rwanda Youth Tech Informants. The government of Rwanda has provided internet as a is electrifying most of the country. So it's you know, it's doing its best that they can do. So what is left? It's upon to us to help contribute to that noble cause. So I see the government as putting in place this whole infrastructures that we need, and then it's up to us young people to help our fellow citizens to integrate to this noble cause.
Thank you, Eugene. Excellent. Now listen, we have certainly had a great feast. We have benefited from rich discussions, rich contributions by all concerned. The ideas, I've taken reams and pages of notes. However, Lily is the one who certainly will be able to summarize and highlight critical ones for us. So Lily, I want to ask you just to take a few minutes just to summarize the takeaways, the calls to actions that we have shared, what we have gathered, what has been garnered from this conversation, and certainly this will provide the basis for future activities and engagements. Lily, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Dameon. I was actually gonna stay here, you know, all day and go through all the challenges and demands with the Global South countries, so as we can create an equally long list for solutions. But I'm not gonna do that, given the time that we have, and I would love to move directly into the call to actions. Thanks to all the guests from the session, to the chair, to the speakers and panelists for really expressing your voices both here and through our conversations. I think it's really clear that to start with, we absolutely need to listen. And quoting Dameon, you know, we're committed to a process of active listening in support of the goal of networks and systems that serve and incentivize collaboration. And without collaboration and dialogue that's based on listening, innovation, growth, partnership, transformation, nothing will be achieved. And following that, second, we need to accept and analyze both the commonalities and the differences in the Global South. We call for exchanges of knowledge and practices to take place at manageable, regular occasions at individual, communal, institutional, national, and regional level. And the key is regular. It has to be regular, but within the manageable range. And building onto this very necessary exchange as a foundation, we encourage evidence-based approach towards finding the most suitable solutions towards the specific higher education content that we're talking about, and having relevant partnership models to be attached to support it. And third, we need to transit from cooperation to co-creation international spaces, as Alexandra has mentioned. And to achieve this, we call for inclusive and collaborative multi-stakeholder partnership, which has been mentioned by all the speakers and panelists here today. You know, we need students, we need youth, we need teachers, administrators, policymakers, multilateral organizations, civil society, private sector. We need each one of the stakeholders to be brought in as equals from the very beginning stage of policymaking and project design, so that everyone knows what their role is and can communicate their consensus and their interests from the beginning, and have more willingness to follow it through and be part of it. And fourth, we need to further our partnership beyond knowledge function of higher education. I mean, of course, you know, with very shown evidence to partnership and interdisciplinarity, we're moving forward a lot with creating comprehensive knowledge at higher education. But now the question to us is, how do we transfer the knowledge to making direct impact on bigger societal problems? Climate change, disaster, violence, you name it. Sylvia shared a very interesting term, interprofessionalism. I mean, it's a very lovely term. It basically, you know, put our ecosystem of the society together. But to achieve this, we need coordination and collaboration among partners that's beyond our usuals. And we need to innovate our partnership models to make it more flexible, more active, more spontaneous to respond to the rapidly changing needs in the society. Fifth, we need to nativize higher education to the digital world. We talk about digital natives, this and that, and a lot of times when we mention that, we're more mentioning natives for the younger generation rather than, a lot of the natives, previous history said. I mean, innovation is not just technology, but technology is definitely innovation. And in order to support that and to support the value of innovation, we call for cost-effective and cost-efficient digital solutions to reach at least the minimal requirement of connectivity so that we can reach those who are really in need, both in terms of access and quality of higher education. And here we call on the IT companies that when you are planning your corporate social responsibility activities, please know that while higher education is a bridge that links knowledge and practice and basic education, labor market, and society, this bridge can always benefit and improve from digitalization, and please join our mission in innovating education. And last but not the least, we need more support, has been mentioned by every single person here today. And when we talk about resource, it's not just the human factors in place. Beyond what we are willing to offer, we need funding. We need technical support. We need collaboration opportunities. We need investments, in those sustainable infrastructure. We need professionals in partnership to work with professionals in education. We need those calls for joint innovation among regions and countries. So we call for anything and everything that everyone is willing to contribute. Now the question is, how much time, effort, money, anything tangible or intangible, are you willing to invest to innovate higher education for the emerging generations in your country, in your community, your own kids, siblings, or yourself? I will leave it here, and I really hope, we have to start somewhere, and let's start right now, right here today, on something that's manageable that we can do to move forward together. Thank you so much, and back to you, Dameon.
Thank you. Thank you, Lily. Thank you all. You have summarized very well. You have captured the call to action very well, Lily, with respect to that engagement with participants, broadly speaking. To all of you, thank you so much. Francesc began, and we're going to invite him now to close and to share his final thoughts. He spoke earlier concerning the UNESCO's agenda, and we look forward to the unfolding of the activities as we build transformative partnerships with youth intergenerationally so that we might achieve the transformation required, given where our globe, our home, is headed. Francesc, to you, my brother. Hey, Francesc. Is Francesc on?
I'm sorry, I run out of and we have been together for more than and like this, yes, so I think that the most important lesson that we have is that there is a lot. Oh, there is an echo. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you should move the other computer.
Oh, there is a second computer.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I know. Okay. Must be me. No. Can you hear me well? I think that the most important lesson is that we need to devote time. And Alejandra said that. And I think that there are two areas that we haven't touched upon and that are really important, and I would like to suggest them for future meetings. One is how to make sure that higher education institutions and systems take into account into their governance mechanisms the voices of youth. I think that that's a very important point. And then a second one, which may sound even more innovative, is that I think that increasingly we tend to recognize a good higher education instructor is not simply a good researcher, is someone who has been devoting time and effort to develop his or her own teaching capacities. Now, I was wondering how much we should be expecting from higher education instructors really to get to know ways in which they can engage in a meaningful conversation with youth, rather than using them as objects for their teaching. You know what I mean? So I think that really making sure that these new pedagogies, which are the student-centered, mean something to teachers. We need to make sure that institutions contribute to their capacity development in understanding that it's not simply a matter of communication strategies. It's more about really recognizing in each student, in the group of students, really meaningful actors in their own capacity development processes. And this needs training. Okay, having said that, we at the Institute, I would like to leave with some homework for you. We at the Institute have a wonderful project. And in that project, which is about precisely providing a platform for youth to express their views about what is meaningful innovation in higher education, we have a survey. And I'd like very much to share the survey that you can access now in Chinese, in English, in French, in Portuguese, in Spanish, of course. I think that the links to the survey have been now published in the webinar chat. So please help us, express yourselves, let us know exactly what do you consider to be meaningful innovation in that specific area of the transition between between high school and higher education. I think that this is really a powerful means to help us to understand what do you really think and what would you like really to happen. Now, having said that, let me end by expressing my gratitude first and foremost to our chair, who has been really interactive. I promise he's a policymaker. He's not really, he's not working in a television network. I mean, he's really a policymaker, and I really loved the way he was conducting the whole session. Same to the rest of panelists, in particular to my colleague Miriam from Cuba, to my colleague also Martha from UNESCO, and all the youth panelists who have been really, amazing in their contributions. I think that we have hundreds of, I would say, notes taken during this conversation. So thank you to all, and also thanks, my specific thanks to the team led by Lily, and also with Julia and the colleagues at the Caracas office who have made really this a successful activity as usual, I would say. Thank you very much, and stay tuned because there will be more coming from UNESCO. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Fantastic. Bye-bye.